The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball. That means we know, and here it comes. Over the kick, connects. Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Alright, you've heard of One Take Kenny. Here's One Take Jack. Since this was a Monday night game, I did not have time to write notes for, obviously, the Eagles game and a lot of what happened in week 2. But should we start off with saying that we should just forfeit this season, forfeit all the awards, and give everything to the Buffalo Bills? Because my goodness, are they looking insane lately. Honestly, the Bills are probably my favorite to win the Super Bowl at this point. Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level, and not only that, we just saw Stephon Diggs go off completely yesterday in the second Monday night game. Like, honestly, I get they were going against a team like Tennessee, who have Ryan Tannehill at quarterback and can't even move on from him because of his contract, but still, the stat line of 317 yards for 4 touchdowns from Josh Allen, with Stephon Diggs having 148 yards and 3 touchdowns. You might as well give them the MVP at this point, especially seeing as how they were able to do the exact same thing against the Los Angeles Rams, reigning defending Super Bowl champs. As far as going back to my schedule predictions, I get it. It's the first 2 weeks. You don't want to overreact to a lot of stuff. But I'm ready to label the Colts as frauds and give that game to the Eagles. Because, my goodness, what an absolute stinker they had against the Jaguars. You know, Matt Ryan, 16 of 30 for 195 yards and 3 interceptions. Jonathan Taylor, 9 carries for 54 yards. I get it. They were missing Michael Pittman. But my goodness, what a terrible game from them. Obviously, they can bounce back because it's only week 2. But my goodness, have these past 2 games, they've been looking extremely fraudulent. Tying with the Texans and losing to the Jaguars. Not looking good for them. Are we getting MVP season Carson Wentz back or something? Because, you know, this week against the Detroit Lions, the same team that the Eagles not necessarily struggled, but they were in a close game with, even though the Commanders did lose. Carson Wentz went 30 of 46 for 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Are we seeing MVP Carson Wentz make a return? Because, like, my goodness, you know, the first week he threw 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, which the 2 interceptions were pretty bad. I think only one of them was his fault, I guess you could say. I need to look back at the highlights of that, but that's like a pretty crazy start for him, you know. And if you want to know the absolute state my fantasy team is in, it's the fact that I'm picking up Carson Wentz to replace Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow, because my goodness, do those two not know how to play the game of football. It's like the reigning MVP and the other quarterback in the Super Bowl. My goodness, did their teams just kind of forget how to play football? Because how are the Bengals losing to Dallas without Dak Prescott? And, Aaron Rodgers had a decent game, you know, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns. But, you know, it wasn't like the most impressive, at least like I'm talking fantasy-wise. But, you know, that's an impressive game, you know, for them to obviously go on to beat the Bears like they're expected to. But, yeah, the Bengals, my goodness, do they not know what they're doing. And yeah, the fact that now my last option is to pick up Carson Wentz after this insane 2 weeks he's had, and you know, that's especially due to that offense just being so high volume. We have Mike Evans getting suspended because he tried to fight Marshawn Lattimore for like the 3rd time in like 3-4 years, it feels like. I mean, it's pretty crazy, you know. We're going to talk about father-son duos later on, but my goodness, does Marshawn Lattimore just own headspace in Mike Evans' mind? Because, my goodness, not only does he shut him down on the field, but he's able to just provoke him so much. Like, this is the 3rd time the two of them have fought, and it's just pretty crazy to always see that. Like, it's always the Saints and Bucks games that have some type of drama. The Rams had a close game against the Falcons, which was pretty crazy to see. the Raiders choked their game away to the Cardinals, and it was a game that saw Devontae Adams get shut down. Even though he got one touchdown, he was held for 2 catches for only 12 yards. My goodness, and that was a pretty crazy game to see, like, them blow it away. But the biggest highlights of the week are obviously Miami going against Baltimore and coming back to win the game, and seeing an insane stat line from, basically anyone on both sides. Lamar Jackson, much like Josh Allen and another quarterback I'll name later on, even though that one might be more jokingly, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are looking like they're in the early season MVP race, and Lamar Jackson really is trying to prove he wants to get paid, because 21 of 29 for 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 carries for 119 yards and a touchdown. And then you had Tua going 36 of 50 for 469 yards. He did have 2 interceptions, but he counteracted that with 6 touchdowns. And that included on the Dolphins side of things, Tyreek Hill going 11 of 13 for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Jalen Waddle going 11 of 19 for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. My goodness, that was a shootout, if any, and it involved the Dolphins coming back, and that was such a crazy game to watch. And then you had the Jets coming back to beat the Browns, which involved them getting a wide open touchdown play and then recovering the onside kick, and Joe Flacco leading them to the win. That was pretty crazy to see. But, as you know, on to the main focus of today's episode. I brought up father-son duos, and my goodness, was this game of Philly versus Minnesota a game about father time. Obviously, I'm exaggerating because a lot of it was due to Kirk Cousins being... I won't be mean. I'll say it being a mid quarterback, not that good of a quarterback, just completely many times underthrowing or not throwing the ball in the right area. But my goodness, before week 2, all I talked about was the Eagles are going to lose this game because their secondary, even though they've made changes, I don't think this secondary has the tools to shut down Justin Jefferson. My goodness, did Darius Slay sun that man? Oh my goodness. He completely shut down that man. And it was one of the greatest things to watch on Monday Night Football. Like, time and time again, they would try and throw it. And there Darius Slay was, getting a pass breakup, getting, of course, an interception. He had 2 interceptions on the day. My goodness, man. It was just such an impressive game to watch from Darius Slay. And then also Avonte Maddox got an interception of his own. But 2 interceptions on the day and completely shutting down Justin Jefferson. 6 catches for 48 yards is all he had on the day. And I'm pretty sure he was 0 of 2 whenever he was guarded by Darius Slay. Or it might have been 0 and 3. But, we all looked at week 1 and, it was Jair Alexander talking about how he wanted to be on Justin Jefferson for most of the game, that he needed to be the one shadowing him. The Eagles made sure, put our top guy on their top receiver. If he gets embarrassed, at least we can say we put our top cornerback to try and stop him. But it wasn't the case, because my goodness, did that man get shut down. And, the defense really stepped up. It wasn't just them alone, Our safeties and Epps and Gardner Johnson, they did well. You obviously didn't see a lot of deep passes because they were covering that deep field. Our linebacking core did pretty well and showed out, especially Kaiser White and TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards coming in with a total of 10 sacks. 10 total tackles. And then you kind of saw a resurgence from the defensive line as Josh Sweat got 3 quarterback hits, and I think he got a sack as well. I believe Fletcher Cox also had a good game where he got he might have gotten half a sack, because I know there was a play where him and I think it was Brandon Graham again, much like week 1, he just completely blew up the play. But, Fletcher Cox had the sack, and so did Josh Sweat, yeah. So, 2 sacks on the day, not like the most pressure, and that kind of was a point that they brought up, that was something I did make sure to take note of, was that in these past 2 seasons, when it comes to pass plays, the Eagles have only blitzed on pass plays 19% of the time. That has to change, especially when you sign a guy like Hassan Riddick, who you brought in because of his pass rushing ability. And what is Jonathan Gannon doing? He's playing him in coverage. There was literally a play where he was covering Justin Jefferson, and you were like, Gannon, what are you doing? Why is this guy, the guy you paid that money, made that big splash in free agency to be a pass rusher? Why are you utilizing him in coverage? He should be on the line getting pressures, brushing to the quarterback, and letting guys like Kaiser White, TJ Edwards, and the rookie you drafted and took the chance on, Kubbi Dean, needs to be out there in place of having Hassan Riddick in coverage, That was the sole reason they brought him in, and I was just so confused as to why they were having him play in coverage. It's not like he's completely terrible, but like, that's not the reason you signed the guy and gave him, that contract for. Play to his strengths. As far as like the defense as a whole, if I have to give them a grade, it's definitely an A. There were actually, I can't even say there were like a couple moments where they let up big plays, because they really didn't. I know Kirk Cousins had 221 yards, but a majority of that came from just like short passes and slowly building up that yardage. But they had the one touchdown catch, but other than that, they got 3 interceptions on him. They sacked him twice, and they completely just forced him to play. They basically forced the Vikings to play through Kirk Cousins, and that was their downfall, because especially the biggest part too, I talked about it, I said, the main reasons we're going to lose to like teams like the Titans, the Colts, the Packers is because of their rushing game. Dalvin Cook held to 6 carries for 17 yards. Obviously, they abandoned the run game early when they started going down. They went down 24-7 by the end of the second half, and of course, you're going to abandon the rushing game at that point. You don't have time to waste clock by rushing, but still, holding their main running back to 6 carries for 17 yards. They're only giving me hope for games against the Colts, the Titans, and the Packers, Although I still think the Packers won, despite Rodgers not having that great of a receiving core. I definitely think that's still going to be a struggle just because of that duo of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. That is going to be one tough duo to stop, and it's definitely going to be a game that I think we'll probably lose just because of how much they exhaust our defensive line, And even though we have a deep rotation, it's still going to be like that's what I expect them to do a majority of that game, is just pound that ball, get that defense tired, and that's what's going to win them the game probably. But still, defense definitely gets an A. They showed out after basically being non-existent in week 1, Moving on to the offensive side, Miles Sanders is right there with Lamar Jackson and even Jalen Hurts as the ultimate bag chasers, because my goodness, all we hear is talk of, Miles Sanders has to prove that he can get a contract, that he can, stay healthy, and that, he can prove that he deserves an extension with this team since he's in the final year of his contract. 17 carries for 80 yards on the season, if I remember correctly. Let me double check because I have it right here. I think he has 176 yards, I think it is. But, he's been playing lights out. We're not lights out because, I don't think he had the touchdown, obviously. He had the touchdown week 1. But 176 yards from him. He's really playing like he wants that back. He's averaging 88 yards per game, showing that he can be the lead feature back this season, And, I'm happy for the guy, I know it kind of made it seem like I wasn't too high on the guy, but that's only because of the amount of time I've seen where he gets injured or he kind of didn't get the carries he needed. But you see here, even with the sort of like running back running back room by committee or whatever it's called, he still got the majority of the carries, and he got 17 carries while Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell only got 6, and Jalen Hurts had 11 rushes for 57 yards, 2 touchdowns, which was crazy, I'm hoping, Miles Sanders can see the end zone a bit more, but he's doing exactly what the Eagles are calling on for him. So many times in this game was he being, he's known as a shifty guy, which he was being shifty, but there was so many times where he was just getting right up in there. And, even when he was getting contact, he was still pushing through it all. And it was just so really impressive to see. Like, he's really proving that he wants to stay, or, well, who knows? Who knows if he wants to stay on this team? But he's really proving that wherever he goes, if it's with the Eagles or if it's with another team, he wants to get paid. And he's proving that he can be that lead running back, The receiving core, because we'll get to Jalen Hurts. Obviously, I'll save that for last. The receiving core did well today. You can tell the Vikings definitely wanted to focus on A.J. Brown. Still couldn't do much with him as he averaged, he had 5 catches for 69 yards and averaged about 3.8 yards per catch. But that's just the average. But had plenty of big catches. There was plenty of times where he'd catch it, he'd be wide open, and he'd take the ball and just shift his way to get extra yardage, which was really good. Quez Watkins, 2 catches, 69 yards and a touchdown with that deep 53-yard bomb from Jalen Hurts to Quez Watkins. Really nice to see Quez getting his touches. A lot of people have been looking to him as sort of like the breakout from the Eagles offense, the guy that once he gets more targeting, he's going to sort of show that he can be that nice wide receiver 3, technically wide receiver 4 when you have Dallas Goedert on the field, being the safety net, getting 5 catches for 82 yards, And then, of course, last game, got no catches. Jalen Hurts tells him, don't worry, your time to shine will basically come. 7 catches for 80 yards for Devontae Smith. Quez is the one that has the lone touchdown, but, all that matters is that receiving core showed out, and they basically sent the message to the league saying, hey, yeah, you can stop A.J. Brown from having that monster game that he had week 1, but that doesn't mean that everyone's not going to get fed, because, what a stat line. 69 yards from A.J. Brown, 69 from Quez Watkins, 80 from Devontae Smith, and 82 from Dallas Goedert. They're basically showing the rest of this league, we have guys, and you have to figure out how to cover all of them. Go ahead and put your cornerback 1 on A.J. Brown. We'll just let Devontae Smith do his work as wide receiver 2. You want to try and shadow Devontae Smith? There goes A.J. Brown. You want to cover both? There's Quez Watkins down the middle of the field. You want to somehow find a way to cover all 3 and make sure that Jalen Hurts, when looking through his progressions, can't get the ball to either of those 3 men. There's Dallas Goedert right there as a safety net to get the good amount of yardage when, that's the one thing I love about Dallas Goedert. Not only is he like the safety net like Zach Ertz was all those years, it's that he gets the ball and he's still able to get some extra yardage. There were so many times where, he'd catch the ball and he'd get that extra yardage that would help them later when it was like a 3rd down. There was a couple of questionable play calling. Like, there was so many times where it was like, there was a play where it was like 2nd and long, 1st and like long, and they were doing stuff like running the ball or running screen plays, and you're just like, why are we still doing this when it's like this long of a play? Obviously the defense would expect you to pass when you want to get extra yardage, but then it's like, why are we running these weird screen plays? And we saw how that came to bite them in the 4th quarter when they tried to run this weird old screen play with Kenneth Gainwell, and Hurts tries to throw the ball to him, and it just bounces off his hands and costs Jalen Hurts as it gets them an interception, and that kind of leaves a stain on what was an otherwise great game from Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts obviously went on with 26 of 31. Was it by the end of the first? I can't remember. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking? But the first drive, he was 5 for 5 on throws, and then he was like 10 for 10 at one point, and I forgot when the first incompletion went, but he was going crazy. 26 of 31, only 5 incomplete passes, 333 yards, a touchdown and an interception, and of course 11 of 57, 2 touchdowns rushing. Great game from Jalen Hurts. There was still some plays where you were just like, What is this guy doing? Why is he taking off so soon? What was he hoping to accomplish here and here? It wasn't exactly the best, but my goodness, in that first quarter, they kind of took their foot off the gas, but still made sure not to let them come back. But they kind of were more conservative, which is why you saw a lot more of those short passes, not many big throws and a lot of more rushing. But he slowly still built up 333 yards. He remained safe with the ball. He wasn't making any like crazy throws that you were just like, oh, that's not a good throw. He was being conservative with it. He was being smart with the ball, and he just did really good. And the one interception, can't really blame it on him. That's just down to whether it's Sirianni or the OC. I still actually don't know who the Eagles OC is. That's surprising. I know Jonathan Gannon is the DC, but I don't know who's the OC. But that's down to whoever called that play, and that's also kind of on Kenneth Gainwell for just letting that ball fly off his hands into the hands of the defender. But yeah, Jalen Hurts had a really good game. Those 2 touchdowns were really good. I was joking around with the rest of my fantasy league members, just saying jokingly stuff like, give Jalen Hurts the MVP. I've seen enough, give the Eagles the Super Bowl. It's going to be the Bills versus the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Just joking around like that because of just the impressive plays that he had, especially that second rushing touchdown. My goodness, that just show, he doesn't give up. He fought for that touchdown. And I'm so happy that, what I thought was going to be a disappointing home opener, they sent the Link home happy. The Link was rocking that game. They were loud for their players, and it was just a real feel-good game to watch, there's nothing much more to say. It was just a good game to watch, even though there were a couple questionable plays. And the only thing that irked me from the game was, my goodness, all those fouls. I talked a bunch about the offensive line and how good they're. My goodness, someone please get that offensive line in check, please, because so many times was it false start, illegal man down the field, where you'd see like Isaac Samalu rushing too far down when they make a pass, and even though if it was a big play, it's like, oh, it's getting called back because of illegal man down the field. It was just really irks to see the amount of fouls the amount of fouls that they were just committing. It was just like, could you guys do a bit better? I didn't like how much they were. I didn't like how, what's the word, like undisciplined, I guess you could say, they were being. It was just like, my goodness, man, you guys need to get that in check, and hopefully that does get in check, because you can't do that against the better teams. I joke around, but like, if you were in a Super Bowl with the Bills, you can't commit penalties like that, because the Bills are gonna make you pay for that, and that's the word I was looking for, penalties, not fouls. That's definitely like, those are the mistakes that you can't make. You're lucky to make them against a team like the Vikings that you can make them pay for that, because even though they let up those plays, or they had those penalties, it's not like the Vikings did much to capitalize, because they just go right back and get those yardages back. And so impressive game. The most impressive stat I saw, or the 2 impressive stats I saw, was that by the end of the first half, the Vikings only had 94 total yards, while the Eagles had 300 total yards. And then the most insane one, because it just shows how much of a GOAT he is, the Vikings O-line had a combined 150 starts. Meanwhile, Jason Kelce was making his 161st start. I love that man. It's going to suck if he retires after this season, but, obviously got to prioritize health. And looking to week 3, I'm a bit afraid, because, like I said, Carson Wentz has been showing flashes. If we can shut down Justin Jefferson, I hope, those guys can shut down Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and Terry McLaurin. I hope they can shut down Carson Wentz and not make him look MVP level. But I think I had that prediction as a win. Even though with Carson Wentz, I still think they get a win. They get off to a great, 3-0 start. Maybe a 4-0 start, because I know they have Jacksonville next, and I hope we don't pull a Colts. The biggest worry is always going to be the Eagles playing down to competition rather than playing up. But really good game. As far as offensive grades, running back room gets an A, B+, because of what happened with Kenneth Gainwell. Actually, no, that's included in passing, not rushing. Rushing offense gets an A because of Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders. The receiving room gets a B+ because of that poor interception that Kenneth Gainwell cost, but also it's countered by just how well that receiving core did. And Jalen Hurts obviously gets an A. He still has parts to improve. He still needs to kind of work on not just completely rushing all the time, but also like because he's smart with it. But there were just still a couple plays which you obviously aren't going to be perfect, but there was still a couple plays where it's like I hope to see him get better with his decision making, because there was a couple plays where it's like why are you rushing? Like that's not. Or like, he kind of had the same issue where he doesn't have it as much as Wentz did, but Wentz had that big old issue where it's like he didn't want to throw away the ball. He always wanted to try and make a play. And you can still see that a bit with Jalen Hurts where it's like, dude, sometimes just throw the ball away. You'll be fine risking that play rather than risking, the sack for loss of yardage, an interception off a bad throw or a fumble, whatever it may be. But other than that, I'm very excited for week 3. Darius Slay is Justin Jefferson's father. And as always, things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you.